Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Nutmegs and the Slides podcast. Right now, we are going to be covering the Champions League final and reaction to that. Do you want to first off say, I know the Champions League final was a couple of days ago, so this is somewhat later than a lot of people would have wanted it to be, so I apologise that it's not come out straight after the Champions League final, but yes, it's here now, and let's get talking. Let's start with the match first. So, for those of you who haven't seen the live reaction of um, of the game, have a flick through. There's always you're welcome to have a look at some of the stuff from the game, reaction to goals, big calls made by the referees, everything like that. But yeah, let's start with going from the game. The Kai Havertz goal. Some PSG fans say it was a penalty. Sorry, not a penalty, a handball because of Trossard when he came off. I believe it was Trossard. It came off him and then played Kai Havertz through. I don't think it was a handball, and I actually think it was a really good finish by Kai Havertz because to go at it like that, just go charging forward, and just finish it at the near post. Safanov maybe should have done better, but it was a good finish, and it is hard to creep it in at the near post like that. And so then you've got what happened afterwards. There was a call on Saka where he handballed it in the box. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm favouring Arsenal here because I'm not. I watched that game as a complete neutral, and I don't think that that was a penalty either. So yeah, that's the thing there. And then it was all constantly going at. It was all happening down Arsenal's end. PSG. I remember seeing this stat. It was insane. Across that whole game, it was the lowest possession in a Champions League final since Arsenal the last time they played in it in Paris. So yeah, I mean, you look at that and you think that's what Arsenal do somewhat. They do like to defend. They do that, but they defended a lot better than Inter Milan did in the previous year's final, to be fair. And I think they attacked more than Inter Milan too. They definitely attacked more. They got a goal out of it. They did definitely attack. And it was interesting to see the way Paris adjusted. Because at times it looked like Vitinha was playing like in the back line as like a deep creator, also giving another option. And it was also like they were playing with a back three at times, PSG, and allowed Hakimi to go charging down the right side because that's one of the things he's good at. He's fast, he's a good dribbler, he can pass a ball, he can finish, he can do a lot of good stuff, Hakimi. So like they put him down that right side and let Doué almost come inward. And for a while it looked like Arsenal were in control. And then Mosquera brings out Kvaratskhelia. That was a definite blatant penalty, to be fair. I think Mosquera, he was decent in that game. Interesting to see him get the shout to play right back over plays like Yuri and Timber. But yeah, I think he had been decent for the most part. And then he does that to Kvaratskhelia, takes him down, and Usman Dembele gets a penalty, and he just sorts it home. It was a good penalty, to be fair. David Raya, I don't know, like I'm still on the fence on whether or not David Raya is good when it comes to taking penalties because I know he can make great saves, he can distribute, he can do stuff like that very well. But it's when he's got a spot kick. Granted, spot kicks they are hard and not no goalkeeper's going to save every penalty they ever get the chance for. But at the same time, it's like players like Emiliano Martinez at the World Cup. Every time there was a penalty shootout, it was like he's ready for this. He is ready to stop the penalty. You know, he does it a bit for Aston Villa too. It, Meanwhile, you got players like David Raya, who every time I've seen him in a penalty shootout, including the one tonight, it was surprising. I remember watching the penalty shootout when Arsenal played United in the FA Cup the other year, you know, and David Raya went to a penalty shootout. Not only did he not save a single penalty, he dove the wrong way for every single penalty, and he dove the wrong way for Dembele as well. So I think the jury's out on whether or not he is a good penalty saver. But yeah, that's that for David Raya. They go 1-1 up, and it forces extra time, and it's not much of the difference. I think the two biggest chances for both teams were Madueke. I thought that was a penalty. To be fair, I remember listening to Peter Drury's commentary of the game. Him and his co-commentator, they said if the referee had given that as a penalty, then the VAR would not have changed their mind. And I don't think they would have. I thought it was a penalty, but it is what it is. The referee makes his decision. Arsenal can choose what they do next. You know, they commit a lot of bodies forward. They didn't get one of their trademark corners until late in extra time. They committed a lot of bodies forward. And then Bradley Barcola. Oh, I mean, he was so unlucky because he's fast, he's got some pace. He could have finished it off in the extra time, but yeah, he big chances for him, and I wouldn't say big misses. I think they are challenging chances, but when you're one on one like that, you've got the pace, you've done the hard work. All you got to do is slot it past the keeper, and you couldn't do that. So yeah. So then the game goes into a penalty shootout, and one of the things I noticed was like when you look at Arsenal's best penalty taker, or even their top couple penalty takers, you've got Victor Gyökeres, you've got Bukayo Saka, you've got Declan Rice, you've got Martin Odegaard. When you look at PSG's best penalty takers, you got Dembele, who obviously scored in the final with a penalty. You've got Kvaratskhelia, you've got Vitinha, you've got, say, Doué. And it was like Saka, Odegaard, Dembele, Doué, Kvaratskhelia, Vitinha. They were all taking off. Even Trossard for Arsenal. I know he can take a couple penalties. Even Trossard got taken off. And it was like, if you knew that that game was going to a penalty shootout, you would keep all of those players on the pitch. All right, of course, exhaust is going to take effect, but that's why we've got, you know, a break before we go into the 30 minutes. That's why we've got a break in between the 30 minutes. That's why we have a little bit of a break before the penalty shootout, you know? And obviously, I've not played professional football yet as a Champions League in a Champions League final. So again, we don't know how tough it is on those players, and every player is different, so we don't know. But at the same time, it's like would the result had been different if they'd kept their best penalty takers on the pitch? But yeah, like Gonzalo Ramos, it was interesting to see him score. You know, I watched him miss a penalty live when I went to go watch Paris Saint-Germain versus Leeds earlier this season. So yeah, he scored that. Then I believe it was who was it that scored the first penalty for Arsenal? I think it might have been was it Gyökeres? I can't remember. But yeah, whoever it was, I think it was Martinelli actually. Um, yeah, they scored. Yeah, PSG score again. Eze. I mean, when I take a penalty, yes, I love going on target. I love, I don't get me wrong, I love going for the corners because I think that's where you're most likely to score. You know, that's where the goalkeeper's harder to reach because he stands right in the middle. He's got to wait until you kick it. Hitting with enough power directly into the corner, you will score. But the main thing about taking a penalty is that you have to get it on target. you have to get your penalty on target. If your penalty is off target, you've got no chance of it going in. If it's on target, even if there's more chance of your penalty going in if you hit it on target and the keeper goes the same direction versus if you hit it off target, and that's got to be the main thing. And Eze didn't do that, you know. And then you got Nuno Mendes who steps up for PSG, who I'll be honest, for a defender, he takes a mean penalty. You know, I've seen him take one for Portugal in the Nations League final in the what's called the Euros against France. I've seen him take one for PSG in the Super Cup, and he takes good penalties. To be fair, and I was actually somewhat surprised when David Raya not only when David Raya saved the penalty, but also that it wasn't one of those lethal top corner penalties, not even bottom corner. Just went straight to the side, and David Raya saved it pretty easily. You know, then Arsenal go level, keeps on going, keeps on going. For Beraldo's penalty, I mean, it's the same thing that I said about David Raya in the United shootout because he dove too late. He dove too late to the side, and in a penalty shootout, doesn't matter how boring the penalty is, if it just goes in low, as long as it goes in, that's what matters. Like when I take a penalty, my instinct is focused on one side, just practice constantly on that one side. Before you take the shot, look at the keeper, see if you can work out which way he's going. If you think he's going to the side you're going to shoot, just take a little touch and knock it to the other side. On target, that's all you've got to do. And you might think, well, he's only got, 30 seconds or so before the penalty. 30 seconds. Sorry, not 30 seconds, half a second. You might think he's only got half a second until the between when he moves and when he take the penalty. Thir- half a second is a long time, as much as you need. Because in that short amount of time, the player can look up, see which way you're going. If you've already gone a couple steps to the right, as David Raya did, and he can just hit it the other way. And that's exactly what Lucas Browder did. So fair play to him, don't take it away from him. But David Raya, he's got to do better. And then there's the big one. Gabriel, he skies the penalty. I know Arteta says like he wanted to take that penalty, but Gabriel, man, that was a shocker to do that in a Champions League final, unless he wins it. No matter what he does, now if he wins maybe the next three consecutive Premier League titles, if he wins, if he leaves Arsenal with like 5 league titles, unfortunately, unless he can win a Champions League with Arsenal, Gabriel, he's going to get remembered for all the wrong reasons. He's going to be remembered as the person who missed that crucial penalty in that shootout. And that's not trying to disrespect him or anything. Like when he missed that penalty, Marquinhos went up to him straight away, comforted him. When he did that, I actually felt sorry for Gabriel because I thought, oh, he's missed. Like I didn't care who won that Champions League final. I was watching it as a neutral fan. But the thing is, it was such a cruel way to lose the final. And yeah, I felt sorry for him. The thing is, he's going to go to the World Cup now, and he'll hope that he can put it behind him. Whether he dwells on it, whether a penalty shootout comes along and he's struggling, whether he'll want to take a penalty, whether he'll still want to be on the pitch so that even if it goes to like 7 or 8 penalties, he doesn't have to take one. Who knows? But it's moments like that that do change a player. But at the same time, if he can come back stronger from that, it will speak levels to the mentality that he has because he's a hardcore player, Gabriel. Like I've seen him, we've all seen him, in these tussles with Erling Haaland, like, stay humble, all that talk. Haaland is one of the best strikers, if not the best striker in world football. To have to have the balls to stand up to Erling Haaland in the manner that he did, where he loses his boot and he says, "Haaland, hey, go get my shoe." Whether he, you know, in the recent game too, how literally grabs onto Haaland constantly. I believe he might have ripped his shirt too, goes head to head literally with him, leans his head in like he's going to headbutt him. That takes balls from Gabriel. I don't condone it, to be fair. I like seeing football. I know it's part of the game, but like, would I do that to any player? Probably not, because they go on to lose that game. I'd say focus on doing your job as a defender, stop the ball going in. They conceded 2 goals in that game, and I thought, well, just focus on keeping the ball out the net for starters. But like to do that to Erling Haaland, and come the end of the season, come out with Premier League winners medal over Erling Haaland. No doubt next year we're going to see more of these two, probably. He's got a mentality, he's got a bravery, Gabriel, and that is going to be a deciding factor on whether he comes back stronger from this penalty miss. Because it changes a player, but it's up to Gabriel now to decide whether that's going to change him for the better or for the worse. Because it can go either way depending on what him and Arsenal do next season and in the next few seasons, even. But yeah, where do the teams go from here? To be fair, Arsenal, I mean, they can get to more Champions League finals. And one of the things I think people forget is just how insane the Champions League can be. Because when you think back to 3 years ago, like Arsenal weren't even playing in the Champions League, and now they've made it to a final. So they can go up quickly, but they can also go down quickly. Arsenal, they definitely have to recruit. They have to keep going. Like every player. If Arsenal still had gone on to win the quadruple this season, if they had beaten Man City in the League Cup final, if they had um, gone through in the FA Cup and got to the final and won it, if PSG hadn't beaten them and they'd gone on and won all the trophies, even if they won all 4 trophies, Arsenal, they would still have to go into the transfer window this summer smart and recruit more players because the job is never done. All right, Manchester City, they are they won the treble the other year, and they come out with in the summer they've got clearly the best squad in the world, and in that summer they buy Jeremy Doku, they buy Mateo Kovacic, they buy who else did they buy? They buy Josko Gvardiol. They bought a number of players, and that's part of going forward. Bayern when they won the treble in 2020, you know, they what did they do? They bought in Eric Choupo-Moting, as a backup striker for Lewandowski. They bought in they bought in Leroy Sané because they wanted more enforcement on the wing. Coutinho left. They bought in I believe they bought in Tolisso that summer too, right? Because players like Thiago left, and they needed players in that midfield. So even the best teams still need to sign players. That's I think I'll come back to this in a second, but even if Arsenal had won it, they still have to recruit smart and strong. Now that they've walked out the season with only one Premier League title, one title, they have to go in definitely stronger. There's players they might be linked to, and there's players who they might want to sign. And there's also, unfortunately, the reality is players like Martinelli or players like maybe even Trossard, players like Calafiore, players like Eze. He's been on the bench a lot. Players could even be Odegaard, you know? They're players that have been at the club for a long time and they've been there since the start of the Arteta reign and the start of their period of challenging for the Premier League when they were constantly finished second and now they've gone on to win a Premier League title. But Arsenal and their sporting directors group, they've got to sit down, they've got to go, hold on a second, we're building a club for the future. If we can get a player that's better than Odegaard, that's better than Saka, that's better than Martinelli, that's better than Calafiore, we should buy that player, you know? And if they don't want to stay at the club, they want first team football, we can sell them. It's up to them, but we are going to not prioritize the players. We're going to focus on what's going to take this club forward because we came so close last season. We need to do whatever we can do to recruit and become stronger. And they've got to do it because no doubt other teams that got nowhere near the final last year, Man United weren't even in the Champions League, they're probably going to recruit very strong. Players like Man City, Liverpool, they've had bad seasons. They're probably going to want to recruit better. Real Madrid's going to want to recruit better. Bayern Munich just came up that little bit short. I favour them to win, and they didn't. So they're going to want to recruit better. All these other teams are going to want to sign better players and get better as a team. So Arsenal's got to do the same. They've got to say, we made it to the final, but that's not enough. We want to go better. Even if we won that final, we still got to go out there and we still got to recruit good players. So yeah, can they win the league again next year? Maybe. Can they win the Champions League? Again, maybe. But that comes down to what they do in this window and also comes down to whether or not players do perform. That's the odd thing about predictions. Many people favoured Liverpool to go on and win the league this season because of the season that they had last and the transfer window that they had spending 500 million. But the thing is, if those players don't work out, whether it's the players you brought in or the players that were there the previous year, like we've seen with Florian Wirtz and Isak and even Frimpong and Kirkheads, and the players that were there the previous year that fell off a bit, like Mohamed Salah, like maybe Allison, maybe God, I don't know. McAllister, he had a big fall off. Where do those players fall off? Whether they use the mentality of keep on being hungry or let the losses affect them, that's what's going to ultimately affect Arsenal. So they have to do what's best for the club. All right. As for PSG, it's the same thing I said. This is what makes this Champions League win special. I think this is one of the best things about winning the Champions League this year because what I said before about constantly growing as a team. You've won the biggest trophies in European football, and you think, okay, we've got to get better. Teams like Inter Milan, they've got to a Champions League final when no one gave them hope. Imagine what they could do with a rejuvenated, reinforced squad. Man City had abysmal years. Maybe they'll want to come back better. Real Madrid had a bad year. They'll want to come back better. Even Arsenal came up short of the league and Champions League, so they'll want to come back better. And PSG, not only did they not only did they buy two players all window, they bought Lucas Chevalier off of Lille, and they bought Zabani, the Ukrainian centre back off Bournemouth. Not only did they buy only those two players, but they also sold Donnarumma, who was arguably one of their most important and best players, and he's shown that with continuing to be really good at Manchester City now. So really, it's a case of, yeah, could this PSG team, they've not had much reinforcements, and I think that still has shown because last year they won the treble, this year they didn't, they didn't go that far in the Coupe de France. Lens won that trophy. They didn't win a comfortable Champions League final 5-0. It took them all the way to a penalty shootout, but they still won it. And at the end of the day, that's what matters in football. And what matters is you win the games, you win the trophies. That's what matters. That's what's going to obviously define your legacy as a footballer. So it's interesting to see, but at the same time, you look at PSG now, and you are going to think, to be honest, this season we might have won the league again. We might have won the Champions League. All right? But here's the thing. We didn't win the Coupe de France. We did win the league, but it was a much closer race than it was the previous year. because like they wrapped it up recently. Last season they had it done before they got to the semi-finals of the Champions League against Arsenal, and this year they won it on a penalty shootout. The previous year they won 5-0 against Inter Milan. So like you've got to look at that. They got to look at that and think we didn't recruit that much that summer. You know, it's great that we've won a league title and a Champions League title back to back, but the need to reinforce, my understanding is that they're going to look to sell Lucas Chevalier, and that's possible, obviously. But the thing is, what are they going to do? Are they going to keep Safanov in goal? Because Safanov in that game, don't downplay his whole season. I think I've watched him again. Like I watched PSG live in Paris, and they've done good. He's done good. Safanov. He's fought hard to get the number one position at PSG over a £40 million or €40 million goalkeeper. But at the same time, in that final, in the 90 minutes, in extra time, and in the penalty shootout, he didn't make a single save. And that's partially got to do with the fact that Arsenal barely attacked. But as well, like, if you want to win more trebles, you want to win more Champions Leagues, is he the goalkeeper that's going to take you forward? You know? And as well, as far as outfield players go, I mean, you look at this PSG squad, that starting 11 from that game, like the outfield players you've got, and by the way, note down, it's the same outfield 11, 10 outfield players that they played in last year's final two. So they got Hakimi, Marquinhos, Pacho, Mendes, Ruiz, Vitinha, Neves, Dembele, Kvaratskhelia, Doué. Those 10 players started both those games, and they're very good. No doubt about it. I think all those players are really, really good. But at the same time, you've got to look. Marquinhos might be your club captain. He's been at the club for years and years. But at the same time, like I said with Arsenal, if you're trying to win more trophies, you've got to look. If he's still a leader and he brings valuable leadership to the team, then keep him by all means. But if there's a better centre back out there that's going to bring more to the club, bring him in and drop Marquinhos. At the end of the day, if Marquinhos thinks he's better and he is better, then he'll show it in training, he'll show it in matches, and he'll get his starting spot. Maybe even him alongside Marquinhos and Pacho might get dropped. But whatever happens, PSG, they had a weak transfer window and as such had a weaker season. So they've got to realise, okay, we didn't upgrade as much last summer. We took the handbrake off, we bought a couple players, but that was it. So I get what they would say. Like right now, we've got players like Kvaratskhelia, Dembele, Doué, Vitinha, Neves, Hakimi, Mendes. Those are great. Those aren't just great players. Those are some of the best players in their positions in the world. And I get if you ask Luis Enrique that, he'd probably say, like, Luis Enrique, that's another one. He's such a great coach on the way he's found out how to beat all of these teams. But you look at that and you think, when you've got those players in particular, how do you get better than that? Those players, those outfield players, particularly the ones you just named, how do you upgrade that? Because there's not much players, if not any, that are better than that. Which is the unfortunate bit. But at the same time, PSG need to upgrade their squad accordingly and try and make a team that can win the Champions League and the treble comfortably again. They might not win it. They might not win it next year. Someone else might come along and win the Champions League. Some other team might have a surprising win the league. But if PSG have had a season where they looked at themselves recruitment wise and went, okay, we had a bad transfer window. We didn't bring in much players, but we still won the Champions League. And that's good. That is very, very good. because that means that we still got the best team in Europe. But at the same time, we do need to upgrade accordingly. And if that means signing the best players, then they will have to do that. So yeah, be sure to get your thoughts in. We're coming to the end now of the early access of nutmegs in these sides, and soon enough the World Cup will be starting. So we're looking forward to lots of more content coming for the World Cup. So be sure to subscribe, follow, do whatever, and we're very excited for the final bit of the early access. So hope you enjoyed the European club season. It's now come to an end, and I'll hopefully see you again very soon.